Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Toy Guys Talking, and it is my pleasure to be talking to Mark from Build-A-Brick. I just got an amazing gift box from, grabbed a couple of my favorites here of, hey yo, Adrian! These are awesome, so just wanted to thank you again, because I just thanked you a couple minutes ago, but that was so awesome, and you've got so much more than what I showed off in that video over on your Instagram page, which is Build-A-Brick. I just want to plug that right off the bat, and thank you. Will again at the end of the chat here. Build-A-Brick on Instagram, and you're on Amazon as well. So all of these awesome customs are available on Amazon, and I can't believe the prices on them too, because these are custom made.
Well, so what we do is, the way we try to explain it to everybody is, since obviously we're not affiliated with Lego at all, and we see a lot of customers at shows and Comic-Cons everywhere, and once they understand what we're doing, they get it. I had a lot of background in graphic design and sculpture, and so doing certain pieces I could get done. We try to just get the highest quality compatible parts that we can. We make sure that like right now we're running 2 3D printing machines to try to get certain accessories that are, like for example, like I brought something out here, like this is our Shining, right, in the holiday season, right?
Here's Johnny.
So that little axe in there is really a tough thing to find if you're a minifigure guy. You end up with a little weird hatchet or something. And so we went to 3D printing for a lot of accessories, and then as far as like painting, we'll hand paint certain things if we need to. A lot of times we can get a figure that's pretty close. For us, it was about the card back, and I know you hit on it on the unboxing, which was awesome. I love seeing you open that box, man, because you deserved every one of those.
Thank you.
But those cards, we spent a lot of time. I designed every one of those cards to have that memory, or at least to have that connection, And I think that's my paying homage to this whole thing. And I think that after 9 years of doing this, and the fan collector base that we have cultivated, which we're so grateful for, was really based on those cards. Everybody understands figures, they come and go, but and we'll change out figures for different looks and stuff, but those cards are really what stand the test of time for me.
And that's how it was with the vintage figures too.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we all of us vintage collectors lost sight of that for a while, because when you bought a new figure, I did it, everyone did it. You tore it open and the packaging was garbage. And so many of us didn't realize that's what grabbed your attention. It's not the figure, right? Duke in his package didn't grab your attention. It was that standing there with that grin, or the the explosion backgrounds.
That's right.
And it's just funny that all these years later we realized the packaging, the garbage was special.
The garbage was special.
So the figures are amazing. But the fact that you have reproductions of like the card art or custom for figures that never existed back in the day, they remind me, not in quality, but they remind me in feel of the Super 7 Masters of the Universe vintage style. Like this Rocky figure, it looks like the figure we should have gotten back in the day, but the quality, this doesn't feel like, I hear 3D printing and I think of the 3D printing at my library,
edges
right?
And stuff.
And it falls apart and it's brittle, but this does not feel 3D printing to me. This feels like, honestly, better than the plastic quality I'm seeing in the big companies. Like it feels right, it moves right, it's not loose, it's not dangly.
That's right.
It's just amazing quality.
That's been a big part of us through 9 years of doing this. We had to work with certain factories that would make the right pieces. And early on, the quality was pretty rough. And so we actually started this business with just cases for collectors of minifigures, Lego minifigures, that would be able to put them in their case, right?
Yeah. So
for us, we found good quality. And as we found, the quality, I kept chasing better and better quality figures down. So about 7 years ago, I think is where we really concreted our sources to get quality injection molded parts. and then we could apply certain things to them, and then whatever we needed to do to get that figure to look as close to the card art as we could. So that's what I was always shooting for, which is kind of backwards, when it comes to action figures. Usually in the modern day, all these action figures are made and then the card arts are just kind of thrown together.
Yeah.
I'm opposite. I'll design the card and then work the figure into it backwards.
Well, that's where the character comes from.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. I mean, Hasbro was revolutionary with their G.I. Joe and their Transformers art, hiring very talented artists and paying a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Carson mentioned in our Toy Guys Talking chat, Carson from 3D Joe's, like, they shelled out a lot of money because somebody there had, some common sense and realized, look, it's not just about the toy. It's that synergy again.
That's right.
So... I was going to ask you, what's the most difficult figure you've ever had to put together, design, like the actual figure?
Yeah, so I think, well, we do a couple things like, for example, right now we're in the middle of Mad Max. He's a little tougher, right? And
thank you. Because I've got one of those I think it's green light interceptors.
Yeah, so you'll see that thing. Notice the figure's not there yet. But he's coming, and we put some images on Instagram of it, and we haven't really put him officially out, but he's a little tricky, and we're actually working on trying to 3D print a shoulder pad on top. So that's kind of where we're at on that.
Be like a separate piece, like on Trapjaw almost.
That's what we're hoping for, yeah. And so I think there's certain ones that are a little tougher than others. The funny ones are like Scarface, right?
Yeah.
Where we have to go in there and hand paint lapels, the red lapel and the white tuxedo and some of that stuff. But most recently we did Jason from Part 2 and from Friday the 13th Part 2. And he has the canvas bag. It's not the little ski mask. It's that canvas bag with one eye hole. And so we actually have a canvas form that's a material form around his head. So it's like the only minifigure in the world that has this real canvas bag on his head. So,
oh man, that's awesome. And
he's doing really good. People are really digging him. So I love seeing that.
As a huge Mad Max fan, it's awesome that you're doing the first one. Any plans on continuing? Because this blows my mind. Yes, old Max. That's awesome. A lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize for the longest time that Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is an old Max story.
Yeah.
And that totally changed my opinion of that movie when I found out he's not 30-something-year-old Max. He's almost 50 They jumped forward.
Right.
Like, it was a couple of years after Road Warrior, but they decided, you're 15 years older in this one.
Yeah, you've been wandering around all in the desert for a long time.
And I can't believe we don't have the trilogy of Mad Max figures, because it's really cool to have some characters evolve over 3 movies. First example that immediately jumps to mind is Tatooine Luke, Bespin Luke, Jedi Luke. That's cool to have them all 3 right like that. But Mad Max Part 1, Max Rockatansky, and then the Road Warrior, and then Beyond Thunderdome Max with like the... Do you think you'd be adding the cloth or simulated capes and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Because now that we've handled this this canvas bag head on Jason, it's really opened us up to a lot of things. And definitely that kind of side skirt on Max. We're working on that right now.
Oh, that's great.
And we even actually, for this, things that are hard in the minifigure world is weapons, right? There isn't, and I get it. There isn't a lot of violent topics in that world. We obviously come in with a little bit more realistic, pop culture fanatical things. Mad Max, and so a double barrel shotgun is a must. It's kind of
absolutely. It's like Prime without a trailer.
Yeah, so a sawed off double barrel shotgun. We now have complete that just looks amazing, and. And we're doing all kinds of different accessories. I'm trying to get the broom handled Mauser pistol that he used also.
Cool.
So little, I think what's funny is your wife actually picked up on a little detail. I watched in the unboxing that some people don't even catch, but she caught that there was a phaser in there.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was my proudest moment of that whole Star Trek set. Cause and I'm an old Star Trek fan too. And I have, but having that phaser is vital. It's the double barrel shotgun.
Yeah.
And so I made sure we designed it in ZBrush and then did a 3D printing, and it turned out perfect. It fits the hand real good. And so
Yeah.
It's all those little dumb details, I guess, for me that I geek out about.
They're important, though. We grew up on toys that had such attention to detail. We didn't grow up on. Look, I don't want to throw shade on anybody here. So if you love Funko Pops, love them, you know?
Totally.
So I'm totally not throwing shade here, but we didn't grow up on Funko Pops. We grew up on things that had a lot more detail, a lot more intricacy. And you know, there's other toys out there other than Funko Pops, but the reason that pops into my mind is because they're everywhere. I mean, every toy show I go to, they're just
everywhere.
They're everywhere, and there isn't much opportunity for detail with those things. But you know, having grown up on all these tiny little details, like, you know, I look at Snow Job here, and all the details are there. You'd think he'd be a simple figure to design, just a white Joe. But you got all the pockets, the side pockets, the leg pockets. He's got his little rifle there. Cobra Commander, you know, he's got his little pistol there, and all the detail on his suit there is just incredible. So, you know, you're adding all this detail onto, you know, a figure that, you know, it's not a like a Marvel Legends figure in terms of articulation, but you're not letting that limit you. You're not looking at it and going, oh, well, all we can do is like one paint application, you know, one line on his chest.
No, in fact, what the interesting part is, because since we've concreted this quality source now, and these figures that we can have the printing on them, most of these things that are coming out now, we've been working with. There's 3 factories total now that are producing just unbelievable things, and they're so susceptible to working with us. So it's been fun, because we'll have like, there's a couple in the works that I won't drop a whole bunch, but like A-Team is coming.
Oh yes,
yeah, and definitely a 80s A-Team, and then we're working on Battlestar Galactica. That's the other 2.
Man, that just you know, we were chatting a little before about how you're not official Lego stuff.
Yeah.
And I was saying, your stuff goes with Lego so perfectly that it is totally like third-party Transformers.
Totally.
It just, you take, I'm looking at my Transformers wall right now, and I'm looking at third-party Jazz and third-party Hound, and they look perfect with the official stuff. It's just, so your stuff really, I think it opens the doors for people getting die-cast 1/24th scale vehicles, because for me, the driver is important. I grew up with G.I. Joe and, you know, wanting Mask and
totally,
and a few Transformers that I wished had drivers. So drivers are important, and they got some really great 1/24 scale diecast stuff. Jada is putting some great stuff out there.
I saw your video; it's perfect.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger right there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So like, these guys are perfect. And, you know, I wasn't sure when I tried that myself. I was just curious to see if he'd fit in there. Yeah. I wasn't sure how it would look. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the ultra realistic, heavy die-cast car with the little Build-A-Brick guy in there. I always say it's a feeling, you know, you can try to plan as much as you can ahead of time. You know, I'm going to get this and I'm going to love that. You don't know what you're going to love until it's in front of you or in your hand. And just looking at that, I was like, I would put a Build-A-Brick guy in every 1/24th scale car that seemed empty to me. So like a 1/24th scale A-Team van, I would never consider getting one. Like, why? I've got the 1/18th scale one. I've got the movie one, but why would I get a 1/24th? Knowing A-Team figures are coming out from Build-A-Brick, it's like, fill that van up. You know?
Totally. Well, I think, you know, a lot of us, especially in this realm, right? We have our demographics getting a little older. I get it. And, you know, Lego, man, they do some amazing things. And I think for a company that's been around that long, that's produced so many cool things consistently, and not having to follow every license that came along. You know, they've done some key ones like Star Wars. Yeah. But the vehicle part, I don't have the time to build sets like I was. You know, I don't have the eyes that I used to have. So to do like an A-Team van, or the reason why I made my order for the Ecto 1 was as soon as I saw you put Freddy in there, I'm like, I'm done. I got to get that, because I've been eyeballing that thing for a long time. Yeah. And I have the Lego version, which I built and with one of my daughters, and it's awesome. But there's something about that realistic element that I love. You know, that's what the old Joe guy in me, you know?
Yeah. Do you have the Ghostbusters? Have you made them?
I have the figures coming. We did them probably about 6 years ago, and we went back in and redid the cards because now we have these really cool kind of action figure frames, kind of like we did on this FAO Schwartz figure, right? So we have that little kind of action figure frame thing going on.
Yeah. So
we've been trying to get all the older the things we did a long time ago. Like we just redid all the Lord of the Rings stuff, which people have been on me for a long time. So I finally got that all done. We updated Harry Potter to that stuff, and G.I. Joe. Obviously, G.I. Joe Star Wars is where I started. So like that Cobra Commander that you have, that Snow Job, those are one of the earlier ones that we did. So we're actually redoing like the weaponry. It's going to be exact. So coming soon, it's going to be like that Snow Job. We're going to definitely do the old pulse laser rifle. We're trying to get some of those exact weapons that, you know, when I did G.I. Joe as a kid, I don't know if I was just weird. Maybe your fan base will chime in on this. I was such an accessory guy. It wasn't even funny. All the, you know how you had your buddies that would come over, you know, after school, and you guys would, you know, put on the cartoon and you get out your Joes and you'd have a battle in your house. I was the guy who was sorting out all my accessories, man. And it took me like an hour, right? I had to make sure, you know, everything was.
Most of us were like that.
Really? I hope so.
I think so, because look at them. Look at the accessories. Those weren't just like simple blobs of plastic and, you know, bendy and, you know, don't poke your eye out, and just like no effort put into them. There was so much like, and I didn't realize at the time, you know, you're a kid, you're playing with these toys, you just figure this is what they are. Didn't realize at the time how special they are. The insane amount of detail, like hand sculpted and then mass produced, but like no detail spared in these tiny, even the original guys, the 82 guys.
Absolutely.
Like, Stalker's rifle is just
totally, man,
for the time, impossible detail, right down to like the stock with the hole in it. Oh,
and the actual kind of etched lines on the clip that was coming down. And I mean, I think back to Flash, right? That laser rifle, all the detail that was in that laser rifle without flimsy plastic. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and some of the guns based on real guns, so they were going off of a real thing, but Flash's gun, totally made up, totally invented, and same amount of detail. It wasn't like, well, this doesn't exist, so we can skimp on this. No, they were going crazy with it, and I think a lot of kids saw that, and how could you not appreciate it? It's like a good book. It's like, how do you not just go back to it and keep looking at it? And I think that's why, to this very day, you can get an old Joe fan, maybe who hasn't even seen G.I. Joes for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and you can dump out a bag of accessories and weapons and backpacks. And I'm always surprised myself when I pick one up, like with some of the unboxing videos, and I go, Xandar's gun or Dusty's backpack. I'm like, how do I, I know that now, but like I was doing that 5 years ago before I had this collection all set up this way, and I was doing videos. Like I was unlocking things that were buried deep in there and going, how did I know that? Like, it's crazy. How can I not do simple math, but I know what Dusty's gun looks like, and it has
how it
a
needs
bipod.
the bipod. Yeah, totally, man. That's crazy. I know. Yeah. It's funny where today, I don't even know, going through, I have three girls and 2 boys, and I witnessed it with them, you know, and I was about as, you know, I'm a pretty big toy guy. So it was like trying to throw that down their throat all the time. And, you know, they were like the rest of the generation, you know, it was more about video games and some of that other stuff. But just that little details, I don't even think they need it anymore. I don't know what it is. For us, it was vital. Like the accessory packs, G.I. Joe accessory packs.
Yeah. Stroke of genius by Hasbro.
Can you imagine something like that ever selling these days? No.
And the brilliant thing about it was, what I think is really neat to look back and see how people have changed these days. I think, well, there's people who let a little thing ruin the whole item for them. So if they're trying to get an original vintage Stalker, and he comes with a black gun, I'm talking jet black, you know, like your headphones black, and they go, oh, it's a repro, it's not supposed to be black, it's supposed to be dark gray. and they let that ruin it for him. Like, it's not the right shade of black. That's what happens a lot today. When the battle packs came out, the extra packs, Beachhead's pouch, it's bright yellow, and his backpack is. Who cares? Who cares? Most kids were like, I was happy to have Gung Ho's grenade launcher back, that gray one. Oh yeah, yeah, one of my all-time favorite. I still have my original from whatever year that came out, because I like that better than Gung Ho's official. Oh, dark gray.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's something that I always really loved about G.I. Joe, where they realized that these things were being played with. It was the age of playing with toys, not just using them as displays. And they were churning those out every single year, all sorts of weird, wacky colors. And it wasn't like a step down, like, oh, you've got the crappy reissue pack. It was, it was more of a sidestep, like, you're lucky enough to have an extra pack. Cool. It didn't seem less special that, the Beachhead backpack was yellow instead of black. So,
well, what's funny is I think as early as I can remember with all that, I mean, probably like 84-ish, 83, 84. I remember it was my first, venture into custom weapons. Like, I would customize, because you could get those packs and then you could saw off the stock.
I never even thought of doing that.
Oh, that's how my mind works, man. It's weird.
That's brilliant. I'm thinking of all the weapons I could have done that with.
Oh, it was amazing. Because I would take the sling off and cut out the stock, and
Gung Ho's gun would be perfect for that. Chop off the strap and the stock, and you've got,
I made it a grenade launcher pistol.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's like totally a Mad Max style thing. Which reminds me, going back to the Mad Max Build-A-Brick, what do you think about a little fly swatter and a monkey for Thunderdome, Max?
That's a good idea. I haven't even gone there.
Because if you don't, like, I'm thinking if there's a trilogy of Mad Max figures, the shoddy first movie for sure.
Yeah.
Second movie, yeah, maybe. I guess. What, like Dog? Yeah, I guess he needs his shoddy, but the dog too, maybe.
Sure.
But the third movie,
we're working on that. But yeah.
But the third movie, it's like, I'm thinking like, the shotgun isn't as vital, even though he had it. I'm thinking like, just it suits his personality more. The fly swatter, because that's what he's come to, right? He's just this old hermit in the jungle. I don't know. Maybe you could even, just spitballing ideas here, do even an accessory pack. A G.I. Joe style accessory pack where you've got a monkey, you've got a dog, you've got fly swatter, or I don't know how many Mad Max Thunderdome fans are out there to justify this, but wouldn't it be hilarious, like a battle pack with all the weapons Max takes off of himself in Thunderdome? Totally. When they
at the counter. Totally. That's what gave me the idea to do the Broomhounded Mauser. When he pulls it out, that was like one of his last guns.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, okay. Yeah, and I think it is. I think an accessory pack for some of these. Now that we're 500. We have 526 products now.
Holy smokes.
And so that's starting to be a lot. And I think when and there's a lot of cool pop culture, accessories that can be added in. I keep thinking, because I still want to do one of my favorite Joes of all time is Roadblock. So I keep wanting to do a chef's hat, the whole thing. So some of those accessories would be kind of cool, and just to kind of add into the mix.
Absolutely. Have you done a Roadblock already?
I have one. It's prototyped. I'm really close. And the trick with him was getting not only skin tone. Skin tone's unique because of how the print has to lay up on it to make it where you can still see the eyes and all that. But it's we just tried the big thing with me was getting the orange in his tone, that kind of rust orange color. And then I'm trying to work on his backpack.
So it's version 1?
It's version 1. I'm working on actually the drawer on the backpack. What we're trying to take it that way.
What about Ma Deuce?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, let me see if I got it.
I mean, there's certain characters throughout history where their gun is just as iconic as they are. Max and his sawed-off shotgun, RoboCop and the Auto 9. Roadblock without Ma Deuce doesn't, it just doesn't. Oh, little mod dudes. That's awesome.
There's little bits and parts all over this place. This is my office that I do a lot of my design work in. So like what you'll see behind me is I have all 500 on the wall. So I can kind of see what I've done and what I need to do and change. So my toy dungeon is downstairs in the basement.
That's a good idea, because when you churn this stuff out, you just forget, right?
Oh, after so many, in 9 years, I kind of come back to something and I want to redo it. If I have better capability now and better, if we have a factory that's doing a better job, we'll try to change it up. But for me, it's now that we have the 3D printing capabilities, the world's our oyster, man. We can go in there and do some cool stuff, especially like monkeys, things that are in ZBrush. I can do fairly easy as a sculptor. That being my background, I feel at home more now than I have been in the last 9 years. So I think there's going to be some crazy stuff.
I have the problem of like not remembering what I did with pictures. Videos I'm pretty good with. I each one is like giving birth. Especially the big, the big productions like the histories and stuff. Like I'll never forget doing Visionaries 88, part 1 of 3. Like that was definitely like giving birth.
Dude, those were like my best videos you ever did, man. With those early ones, because it was like such a. I mean, you were inviting us into this space that I think is why we've been so connected to you. Is that you kind of opened us up to this being, we've all gotten used to in the 40-something range that, this is our time now to kind of sit back and enjoy what we really enjoyed back then. As life's gotten more complicated, and whether we're losing loved ones or, just things are happening that are a lot more traumatic, I think, now. And it's funny to sit back and enjoy your tours. So when we go through and you pop up, I mean, I wasn't even like a Brave Star fan. And now I'm a huge Brave Star fan, which is crazy. For some reason, I must have skipped over that. I don't know what happened. But I started watching. I got to some of the DVDs now, so now I plug those in. So
I go by feel with all of it. And, there's some old animated shows I watched and some I didn't watch, and I've tried to experience for the first time. You either feel it or you don't. And sometimes even if you want to love it, you just can't love it. Like Jason the Wheeled Warriors, I want to love it.
How weird that you just said it, man. I'm looking at the DVD. Like I literally just watched that today.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Want to love it and know it's supposed to be great. And it doesn't really grab me. Hope it does.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep trying, but it just doesn't really grab me. Brave Star, though, man, that hits the heart. It fills up the spirit meter for me, strength of the bear. But the lessons, it was like everything that they learned on He-Man, they perfected it with Brave Star. It's too bad that was like, a financial failure for Filmation, but that's not what I think people should focus on. It's like this culture of focusing on the box office. Like people are always watching box office. What's the movie doing? It's not your job as an audience member to worry about what the box office is doing. It's your job to be entertained. Like have fun. Don't worry about the business. You're not invested. Like you're not a shareholder. There's so many people who aren't shareholders and they're just worried about how this movie will perform.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, it feels like I had a great talk with Tom Cook, who did all the animation stuff with He-Man in the Filmation, and he kind of went all the way back to like Flintstones, and he had been there for a long time. Definitely a rock. And he was talking about how that just at the end was just he's like it was just so ugly. It was like they were just sending everything over to I think he was talking about North Korea or South Korea at the time, and sending stuff over to have them make it. And I was like, man, so he was like, guys were just falling off like flies, and these were so talented. I mean, guys, we were being raised by, so it was neat to hear his take on a lot of it, though. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I remember hearing from when I talked to Buzz, he also, he kept it classy, but it's obvious that he's, he wasn't pleased with how G.I. Joe was handled with Deke. And again, it was just cost cutting, right? We got to save money here, and
that was it.
I don't know what the right answer is there, but I'm willing to bet, and I'm not a betting man, but I'm willing to bet that wasn't the right answer, the route they took. Maybe just a short run would have been better, like less would have been more keep the cast, just instead of doing whatever it was, 30 episode run for a season, just do 8, you know, or something. It would have, I think, in the long run, been a much better idea.
It was kind of like G.I. Joe in the beginning, right? When they started doing those little mini-series. Yeah, it was perfect.
It was a 5-parter just to kind of test it out and see what do we got here. So, you know, if you're on the decline, if things are not looking good and you're not sure about the animation, if it's not worth it anymore, then do a 5-parter, which Operation Dragonfire sort of was, but it was just so cost-cutting and, you know,
it's true.
It's too bad that we didn't get another, you know, proper Sunbow send-off. So I guess in headcanon, I've gone back and I've said, okay, my send-off is Arise, Serpentor, Arise. Even though it's comes before everything in season 2, to me, that's where G.I. Joe peaked. That was like, if you really think about it, if you save that, even though it doesn't really work with the continuity because Serpentor is all throughout season 2, but if you just kind of end it with that, if you sit down, watch the entire G.I. Joe Sunbow run, and instead of ending with a movie, you end with Arise, Serpentor, Arise, I think it's a much more satisfying experience that way.
I think you're right on. Yeah, that's kind of that's the small mini series take on it was what I remember the most. It seemed like the everyday where it got kind of monotonous and you were just kind of checking in on the story. But man, it was like those story elements of a 5 series was awesome. You know,
proper build up, drama. The Joes would lose and lose and lose and lose, and like, well, are they ever going to win? They do in you know, the 5th episode, but
real story arc.
But totally. The villains were actually built up for 4 episodes to be credible threats, and then
it's true.
They saved the day in the 4th. But I love hearing, you know, like when you say you weren't a Brave Star fan and now you are, because like that's what I'm basically trying to do is recreate that feeling of the vintage toy stores where people might have gone straight for the Transformers, or they might have gone straight for G.I. Joe, but they walked past Brave Star, or they walked past the Silverhawks, and they might not realize it, but they remember it. It's in there. It's locked in, and it's cool to hear, like, you know, people like, you know, I do remember Thundercats, or I do remember Silverhawks, and a lot of the similar memories that I have with people are, I remember looking at it and thinking it's cool and not being able to afford it. I'm like, yeah, Centurions, Silverhawks, most toys from the 80s.
Especially, I think I run into the same thing with you with Mask. It was just, I could have scrapped together my $3 to go down to, you know, Jimco or FedMart back in those days and pick up my G.I. Joe. But man, if Mask was there and it was a $20 set, man, forget it. I'd have to walk away. And remember that.
Yeah, especially dealing with a different scale too. It's like I couldn't. Maybe in my head I couldn't rationalize the purchase for that reason. Is I was a big scale guy. On that note, I was a huge going back. Gabriel, I loved the Lone Ranger line. Oh yeah,
they were and that's really overlooked, right? And there wasn't very many of them, but there was a. If you go back to that Gabriel line, they had the roots to probably some of the best action figures at the time, where the holsters would actually fit their little revolvers.
Oh, wow.
And Tonto had a little sheath where the knife came out of the sheath. Way past, I mean, G.I. Joe didn't even, introduce that holster till Chuckles, maybe?
That's true. That's true.
A working holster, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted it so bad when I saw General Hawk when he came out. I was so excited because he came with that 45, and I was like, oh, man, there's going to be a holster. Oh, let down again.
Yeah, and especially since he has it molded on his chest, too. This is redundant.
Totally.
Why not? Or even just sculpt a hole in there.
Well, and Gabriel did that little flap where it was kind of a little flap area where the gun would kind of slide into it from the back.
Oh, that's cool.
So it worked really good, and it snapped in. Cost effective. It couldn't have been that much more. But, you know, it was kind of like that. And I think my biggest love for that 1/18 scale was Buck Rogers. I was a huge Micronauts fan even. I mean, I loved all those. So, I mean, I go back. I'll be 40. I'm 48, just turned 48. So it kind of goes back into that early, you know, even mid-70s to late 70s stuff was really hot for me. I mean, you know, but I think they led me into the glory, you know, the paradise of G.I. Joe, because it kind of got me ready to go. You know, that and Star Wars, obviously.
Would you say, since it sounds like you're a few years before my time, you know, I grew up in the 80s, and I'm of the mind that, man, this is maybe better than most other eras, but, you know, there's always that thought of, am I saying that just because I grew up on it? But since you saw a little bit before that, would you say the 80s was like the heyday? The golden age of cartoons, toys, comics?
Hands down. I think it was like this. It's weird to be at my age now looking back, and to have been really in the toy world the whole time. You know, we've been married almost 30 years, and my wife can testify, man. And she's just so like, oh, she's so tired of the fandom, you know. And she, but I'm just till the day I die, you know. This is what I'm going to do. And it's funny that in the beginning there in the late 70s, everything was trying to get there was almost like everybody was scrapping for position. You know, think about the fight between Star Wars, G.I. Joe, or Star Wars, Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica with Mego, right? That was a huge fight with who's going to get the license. Mattel's fighting for it, you know, and they've done some good documentaries lately. You know, I think, what is it? The toys that we used to know her with?
The toys that made us.
That's it. So that's done a good job at kind of laying out how that all played out. But those Amigo toys in the 70s, it was a little before my time, all the cloth and all that. So I had a hard time because I wasn't a huge 12-inch Joe guy. I admired the weapons, the accessories, because they killed it, you know, for something that came out in the 60s through the 70s to have so many accessories that were realistic. I remember I was always like, oh, man, I really want one of those. And I think I got one and ended up kind of like, what am I going to do with this big thing? I can't put him in anything.
Yeah.
So, and Star Wars was kind of ruling my time back then. And, you know, with the accessories and play sets, and, you know, they had done a good job. But, man, you look at the Buck Rogers, the Mego Buck Rogers articulation.
Yeah.
Gabriel articulation. They had knee joints so they could sit on horses. I mean, they had a lot of stuff happening before the 80s. And it might have been right there, maybe like 1980. Zorro, some of those cartoons from that era are excellent, man. Those were some of my favorites. And that kind of led into what I think He-Man, you know, my love for He-Man and all the, you know, Master of the Universe stuff. And then, of course, G.I. Joe is just, G.I. Joe will always be king to me, I think.
G.I. Joe, like I've thought for a long time, this stuff was way ahead of its time in terms of detail and articulation. And then I got to look at some of those 70s Mego figures, like the Black Hole. You remember those Black Hole figures?
Excellent. Yeah, I have all those.
Incredible.
Love those, yeah.
And the Joes are just totally, they're based off of those 70s Mego designs. So the design is incredible there. But what made the Joes special is that instead of just, wow, what an amazing figure with articulation, but it's also Lonzo Wilkinson, the Ranger. And that's
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that, like, you can't stress enough that
you can't.
The character, you got to add life to it. You got to make it more than just a little toy, a little hunk of plastic. It needs to be a representation of an admirable human being.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They nailed that with G.I. Joe.
I think I totally agree. I think that the file card element of G.I. Joe was what gave us I think it's what gave us that decade of life during that whole 80s. Was that we didn't even know anything about these guys. And now we had this little snippet of information that didn't tell us everything, but kind of gave us little insights, you know, to personality traits or behaviors. I loved, you know, where they came from, what their military specialty. I remember loving all that part. And then when you watch the cartoon, since they never went into any of that detail hardly, you were like, oh, you could piece it together. That's why he did that, you know. Yeah. Like Flash was my welder.
It's really interesting that they were able to make the characters so different from each other, even if they looked similar. You know, like you look at Short Fuse and Hawk, and they don't look too different. But you read their bios and you go, totally different guys who are going to react in a totally different way in the exact same situation. That's what sparks the creativity, you know, like incoming, like what's Short Fuse going to do? He's going to lose his cool. What's Hawk going to do? Get yourself together, Joe.
That's right, man. And so when we were playing with them, we would put that together, right?
We're writing.
And yeah, exactly. Very creative process, yeah.
Yeah, people just didn't realize that by giving you a well fleshed out character, people are going to take those characters, and it's kind of what they do these days in TV and movies. They're playing in other people's universes, in other people's worlds, and they're they're creating these new situations with these old established characters. Now, some of the things I don't always agree with, like that's not true to the character. That's not how that character would react. So we've gotten more into that whole, the name is more important than the character, than the behavior. Yeah. But that's what's going to happen.
Especially with the G.I. Joe movies, right? That was tough on a lot of us, I think.
Yeah, in name only.
Yeah, and I think so. I think it was really just trying to figure it out in our head. And I go back and try to run through them again. And as standalone movies, they're not bad. It's just that we didn't get our painted picture.
Yeah, call it something else. That's what I always say.
Exactly.
Like
that's right.
If you had called it anything but, like the He-Man Masters of the Universe movie would probably be a lot more enjoyable, the Dolph Lundgren one, if it wasn't called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Totally. Yeah, Beast Lords or something.
Something like that. Totally. And the example I use with that, it's interesting because they were going to do a sequel. The first one tanked, so they pulled the plug on the sequel in a way. They ended up doing it and calling it Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme. But it wasn't like they reused whatever they could in terms of props, locations, crew, and just said, okay, this isn't going to be a Masters of the Universe movie. And you watch Cyborg without the baggage of it being a Masters of the Universe movie. And I think it's a little easier to get through than if it was, Masters of the Universe 2. The G.I. Joe Retaliation, if you call it anything, if you called it Delta Force, I think I would have preferred a Delta Force reboot than calling it G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm right with you. Yeah, I think because there was cool stuff in it. It was hard for us to choke down, and I think the rest of the world could care less, right? They just went and saw an action movie,
The funny thing about that is the studios, the people in charge of this IP these days, they think it just doesn't matter. No one will care.
Yeah.
But what I've, just in my own experience of doing this YouTube thing, I keep hearing about parents who introduce these classic series to their kids, and the kids just go down the rabbit hole, deep dive, as they say these days, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
So they find out about this thing, or even a new movie is coming out, and the kid is like, Dad, what is this? Oh, well, that's I don't want to say Rambo. I'm looking right at my Rambo collection. That's not one kids should be getting into. But like the new G.I. Joe movie, if a kid asks, Dad, what's this G.I. Joe thing? Who's Snake Eyes? And the dad hands the Snake Eyes file card. This is Snake Eyes. The kid isn't just going to go, oh, I don't care. It's old. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what's new. The kid is going to go into it. Like, I hear it so often. The kid does a deep dive. And they watch the old cartoons. They read the old comics. And they fall in love with the character for the same reason we all did in the first place. Because it's timeless. It's just timeless themes. It wasn't like soup du jour. These are timeless themes. And then when they start changing the themes, the kids who didn't grow up on it, but they appreciate and they recognize the value of that character, they're going to go, oh, something stinks here. Why'd you change it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's kind of a weird, I've seen it with my own kids, but we do a lot of shows, right? So at most of these Comic-Cons or conventions, we see all these young kids come up. The parents will come up, and it'll catch us a parent's eye first, right? Because we do so much retro stuff. And as soon as the parents come up, the kid will be like, the kid digs the minifigure look of something, so he just comes up looking for a toy.
Yeah.
And then he'll see G.I. Joe, or he'll see some of these other things, and we get those responses. The weirdest thing, I don't know if it's kind of a bad thing. I mean, I always get a little cringe when I think about it, because the kids are all, I'm like, hey, what are you guys into and stuff, and they immediately say Deadpool, or like things that are like, I mean, I get it, man. I'm not a critic, but everything's R-rated. I mean, we had a 7-year-old girl, no joke, a 7-year-old girl come up, and the mom is with her, and the mom's kind of impatient, and she's just like, hurry and pick something. And the little girl's like, Mommy, I want this one. And it was The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And the mom's like, okay, I guess so. And then she's like, do you want another one? And it was The Priest. We had The Priest and The Exorcist set.
Yeah.
And, for our adult, horror collectors, man, they just love that, right? But I'm like, man, this 7-year-old girl, I'm like, how is this possible? Like that thing freaked me out when I was a kid back then.
Yeah.
But now everything's just so mainstream and so normal, which again is why I told you a little bit in that pre-show is that I think there's a wholesomeness to your show that I wish more parents with young kids would just turn them on to the show. Like just watch, because kids love toys. I don't care what anybody says. It's not that kids just love video games and all that. You put a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old in front of a toy, they'll play with that toy if it's cool.
Absolutely. Well, I have the exact same reaction when I see kids who are into Deadpool or stuff like that, and I don't feel like it's being a prude. The reason I feel that way is because, childhood innocence is a wonderful thing.
It is.
And hold on to it for as long as you can. It won't last forever. The world's a rough, mean place, and it'll bring you to your knees, keep you there.
That's
if you
right.
let it, the Rocky speech, right?
That's
Why
right.
wouldn't you just try to hold on to that innocence for as long as you can? Because
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people, later on try to recapture it.
That's what we're all doing, right?
And so many people, they come to this epiphany that, wow, everything that I need to know, I knew as a kid. And I've allowed myself to be diverted, distracted from just the simple reality of what it, the simple reality of what it takes to be happy.
That's right.
So yeah, when I see kids that are into this adult stuff, I just feel like, look, I know what it was like when, I was younger, like a teen, and people were saying, don't grow up too fast, kid. I'm like, what do you know, old timer? So I've been on both sides of it, right? And now I'm the old timer and I'm not trying to do it the way it was bluntly, rudely done to me. Like, I don't try to do it in a way that I'm smarter than you. You need to listen to me because I'm older.
Yeah.
I try to impart this on people, not because I think I'm older and smarter, but because I know how precious it is and how what a sad waste to just fritter it away. And if a kid is that steeped in like very mature, very violent, cynical, negative, disingenuous, whatever other word you want to use, stuff at that young an age, are they ever going to be able to recapture it? Did they ever have it?
And they don't go backwards. You don't go from The Exorcist to Disney.
No, you don't.
So you don't go backwards. And I notice it kind of like what we're talking about, where you get older and you're kind of trying to recapture that because it was a good feeling. It was innocence, where we have, I mean, come on, just in the reality of the things you have to do in a daily period from the second you wake up, whether it's aches and pains,
stretch,
those things just kind of wear on you. So we now know at this point that this was a happy place for us. So we kind of found this, a lot of, especially in this community, and the reason why we're so all linked together, kind of like we talked about, there's a brotherhood there. There's I feel like, even though I may be a little older than you, we were all playing with toys at the same time. So there was an era, and we all just kind of locked together all over the world. And so I think kids now, everything's being forced down their throats so hard that things like Deadpool, man, I appreciate the movie. I appreciate the character. I appreciate the comedy. On an adult sense, it fits a void in Marvel's universe that they needed to have. I think there's a part there, as the Joker, right?
Yeah.
That's as far as movies go. That's another one of those that it fits a void that needed to be handled on an adult level.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as a collector and as somebody that enjoys all that era or even, this modern stuff, I'm compelled to make some of that stuff. Horror, I mean, classic horror. I'm compelled to make Halloween and Jason and all those because to me, they were a horribly frightening time as a kid. And they're such an iconic memory to Halloween that I feel the nostalgic childhood of Halloween, and I don't even have to watch the movies or anything. I just have to look at the card and, and feel that memory. So So what you'll see like on Instagram,
spookiest minifigure ever.
Totally. And we kind of have that iconic part of trying to hit the big, the big monsters, because those were scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as toys go, I don't think I was ever compelled to have a Jason action figure to play with. None of that really mattered. So to me, with Build-A-Brick, it's filling a little memory void. Once again, like I mentioned, that the figures to us have all been secondary. The card, that memory of the card was primary, because that image, what that looked like to us, and just having a little piece of that. And, I think looking back now, and, you looking around your room, you've obviously amassed a great collection. And to go back and try to get some of that on a card,
oh yeah,
you know what that's like.
Ouch.
And it's painful if you're, just a working guy and you're trying to, raise a family, and you're trying to get a little bit of that passion that you had back then and love for a property that was, Star Wars or something. We feel like we fit that. That's why I was fighting the system, I think, was to come out with a product that was, I could keep affordable, but keep fun, and just kind of tap into that little memory. And then, if people wanted to fight or find a reason not to like us because we weren't a big brand name or we weren't Lego, I keep trying to tell them, Lego is an awesome company. I mean, just amazing, but they're never going to make Halloween Michael Myers ever.
Right. Or Jeffrey. I mean,
or Jeffrey.
Or
there'll be
Rocky,
crossovers,
or Rambo.
Exactly.
Like even like a great example is Rambo, which is over. I don't have it here with me because it's on my desk where I edit. But Rambo's an R-rated movie, and Lego ain't making Rambo.
They're not making Rambo.
But Rambo isn't. It's not the slasher R-rated type of stuff. It's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like it dances that line of fun R-rated violence, where at least the first two.
Back then, I took the wife to the new one. That was a little rough.
Yikes! Yeah,
but then the first ones, I agree. I think, that rating system, right back then, and your films, that history of the rating system was completely obscured back then.
Yeah.
So what was rated R, it was rightfully so. I think back then they had to have one F word, right? Would make it a rated R. So we saw things that, the deaths and all that were very limited. I mean, in that first Rambo, I mean, the violence and stuff really wasn't that.
One guy gets killed, sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
It wasn't
like indirectly by Rambo. It
That's
wasn't.
right.
It wasn't even like a. Whoosh.
No. And so to see that change compared to the current Rambo that just came out, the last one.
Yeah, that one missed the spirit.
That kind of shows you where we've come and why it's almost more important that we restore some of this that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
To the if it's not just the youth, just the guys our age, people that understood what this was. It's like utopia for some of us.
Well, when I started doing the videos, like I was doing Armchair Directors movie reviews with my friend, and we would swear every now and then for emphasis because it's movie chat. It's dudes talking about movies. So that's that world. And then when I started to do my videos here, I wasn't really thinking about it at first, so I'm not much of a big swearer anyway, unless it's for emphasis. But, I might have snuck in like, an a-hole,
See, I'm going to have to go back and watch those videos
here
now.
or there. And I wasn't really, I wasn't that strict on the censors, but the more I did it, the more I felt, as I'm going through all the old cartoons and reading the file cards and reading the comics, I started to realize the censors were in place not to be censors, the stick in the mud censors, because that's what we're kind of conditioned to believe our whole lives. Like, oh, darn those censors. I started to think, no, those censors, especially Lou Scheimer in particular, like his censorship, I just kept thinking, man, thank you, Lou. Thank you for shielding me, as long as you could from a lot of this crap that I didn't need to deal with. So, I'm very appreciative to him, to the Sunbow censors. And as I did my videos, I just started to think, what would the Sunbow censors or what would Lou Scheimer say? And it stopped me, when I was doing the videos from, doing something a little more adult themed, more risque, having like blood or something gory for something that's totally wholesome, like G.I. Joe guys were parachuting out of jets before they explode so they don't die. And I could never bring myself to doing something just for shock value, because it went against the spirit of all those old shows for me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what makes you different, man. And there's, you look in there and if you're digging around YouTube, there's a lot of different channels. There's a lot of different things that try to hit all these different little,
check marks. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when I'm watching, I think what just stood out so hard was that you could feel the positivity, you could, and I'm not just throwing smoke at you. I mean, I remember that I think I'd watched the first, I want to say it was one of the histories of G.I. Joe. I think it was in 84, like one of the early 83. You did 83 and 84, right?
Yep.
It was one of those. And I remember thinking, I'm like listening to you and I'm like, first of all, who's this guy talking about Joe? I'll see if he knows about Joe.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
And I remember as soon as I started watching, man, I was just gone. I mean, it was, not only, showing the flag and stuff. And that was, when I saw that in the intro, I was like, holy crap, I gotta, and I remember thinking, man, you're laying it out in a way that nobody's doing right now. And it's awesome to feel that feeling again, where it just seems like I was telling you a little bit in the pre-show, like having an experience with Robot Chicken, right? And being able to see that I had a chance to actually visit the studios and get a tour and talk to, I was, in the office with them and I was able to see that they were, they had a bunch of Build-A-Brick stuff around because they were toy guys, they are toy guys, man. There's a deep-rooted toy love in that studio, and you can feel it in the show, but the show is definitely directed towards adults. Yeah. So we kind of missed a little bit of that innocence that we had in there, and it is what it is. But what I loved about what you're doing is there was a raw innocence to what we were feeling back then. And I don't say innocence like in a prudy sense, like you were saying. It's really more in a sense of like G.I. Joe, for example. Most of the toys we loved had guns, knives.
Yeah.
Where you could say to a certain extent were violent, but man, there was no deaths. I mean, they were controlling a storyline with the containment of weapons and violence.
Yeah.
So,
and it didn't feel sanitized.
No, it didn't at all.
G.I. Joe, the people who didn't watch it, who didn't feel it, the parent groups really targeted it, and said, this is just too violent. They never really sat down. They didn't watch a 5-parter. And at the end of it go, that's really well done. That's a lot of effort is put into that. And it didn't feel sanitized. It was good versus evil. And it didn't matter that it was guns. It could have been anything. It could have been darts.
Rocks and stones. Yeah, it didn't matter.
Stones. It wouldn't matter. That the whole point is good triumphs over evil.
Totally.
That's the important part. Something like the Rambo cartoon definitely feels sanitized because it's like and that it. I love Rambo, but that cartoon it's funny, right? And it's not supposed to be. But I think the Joe stuff.
This one, totally.
Yeah,
I know.
But that's where that the toys, the cartoons. That's where it takes me. I really appreciate when people say that they think I'm very positive, and I try to be always. But it's also that's where that stuff takes me. Like I'm just kind of like a conduit, and it's just kind of flowing through me. And that's why whenever, there's an opportunity to do something, really violent or risque or, like something sex related, there's a lot of sex addicts in the world these days, and it's all that's ever on their mind. And, it's the only comment that they can make about anything these days. I can never do that. I can never go there because that's not where I've been taken to. I feel like these shows, they take me to a very special place, and everybody else too. And when you're in there, you don't want to throw red paint all over this nice place that you're in. It's like being in this room and what I'm going to do, it would be funny, and just throw cans of red paint all over it. Why would you do that? It's just so nice to leave it the way it is.
Well, and I think it's like, and I love how you don't sanitize even your show. You kind of are giving us the true side of what that toy meant to us. Now, I think, and you're right, man, when you think of, I mean, just that one simple aspect of the female Joes, right? And man, I think as a kid, and I grew up like many 80s latchkey kids, raised by a single parent. I was an only child. So it was I mean, I have a best friend that, man, we've been Joe fans our whole life. We're very similar upbringing. And we noticed that the one thing that brought us together was that the father figure in our life was G.I. Joe. I mean, it was whether it was the combination of stuff, and you can contest that Gung Ho looks like a Village Person, but it's like, I'm telling you, man, he was the father figure, man. He was a tough guy with a tattoo on his chest and you know, the admiration that they had for the female characters, and yet still respectfully, you know, treated them with respect. It was just teaching us all the way through lessons. They weren't degrading the girls on the team. They weren't saying, "Oh, you guys are less than good," or, you know, less than we are. You know, so we grew up thinking Scarlett was awesome, right? Yeah. That she was the toughest chick on the planet. And then CoverGirl came along, and it was like, oh man, you can have a model that drives that thing, you know? Yeah. So I think there was a lot of elements to that yeah, you hit it on it. That whole the lessons, man, were incredible. The whole
making fun of Gung Ho, or any Joe for that matter, it's just like, get to know the character. I mean, that's very that's very dismissive, and that's like looking at a person on the street and just looking them up and down and going, "Oh, here's my assessment." No, totally. You should have a coffee or a tea with that person. And Gung Ho, I've never thought of Gung Ho as anything other than what you just described him as. He is gyrene 100%.
Totally, man. It was like, that was as manly as you could get, because he didn't have to wear a t-shirt.
And he wasn't. Yeah, and he wasn't like even the Arctic. He's introduced in the Marvel comic like shirtless. It's like,
one of my favorite episodes. Yeah.
What's this guy's deal? It's like, well, it's a new figure and they want to show off his outfit, but it's like, that guy with the marine tattoo on his chest probably could walk around the Arctic bare-chested.
Right. Well, wasn't he on the polar bear on the box art? I thought.
Is he?
It seemed like it was him. It was somebody. It was either that or the snowcat. It was some like off thing where it was like, man, okay, I guess he fits in.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Yeah. We're at about an hour right now, so we're just gonna wrap up for this public part. We're gonna keep going for Patreon, but I just wanted to get back to the Build-A-Brick figures and just say I can't believe like how affordable these are for what you get. These cases, we were talking about mint on card and how hard that is to find. These cases are beautiful. They look kind of like those baseball.
So the funny part was about, so in the beginning it was, I had a family. There was going to be no way I could go and buy a bunch of graded action figures on cards, right? And I remember thinking, I had done a lot of graphic design, and I'm like, I'm going to make cards how I want to make them. So I made them, and I was like, I'll fit them in this little case. And then I was looking at it going, well, a minifigure fits in there perfect. Mm-hmm. And that led me to the whole, I think most of our customers now, there's the toy guys, the real like us, right, that are very, very toy guy, that we have to have a certain figures and all that. They like the idea that it looks like a graded acrylic case.
Yes.
And I do too. That's, you can see on my wall, they kind of have that to me. But for, like you mentioned, Rambo sitting next to your desk, your editing, station.
Yeah.
That's probably 80% of our business is the people that take it to work and just sit it next to their office, and they don't care what toy brands, they don't care about any of that. They're never going to play with it. It's going to sit there next to their computer, and when their day gets real bad, and it gets bad, and it's 3 o'clock's rolling around, and you just can't wait till 5 o'clock, they can look at what their favorite show is, whether it's Breaking Bad or it's an old Star Wars figure or G.I. Joe or Master of the Universe. They can look at that thing, and man, we hear those stories over and over again, that it just gives me that little bit to take on that next 3 hours or that next 2 hours of work. So I feel like it's evolved to this, where originally it was just going to be a collector case for minifigures, has now evolved into this thing where I feel almost compelled to make sure I hit all those memories, Yeah.
You get to escape a little bit, or I prefer to think of it as transporting. Just because you're at a certain place doesn't mean that your mindset has to be there too. And yeah, like with the job where you're dealing with the boss or the whoever, coworkers, customers, sometimes all you need is, staring out a window is nice, but staring at just things that, like good old Jeffrey, just stir up good old memories.
I'll give you a little segue to Patreon. Is that I'll give you the story on that card in our next segment.
Okay, sounds good.
There's an interesting thing in there.
But the thing I really love about the presentation of these is the ability to, I call it futzing. You can, just like I did, take it out, play around with it a little bit, and then you can put it back in, stick it back in, and now you've got a mint on card type of figure. And dust is something that a lot of collectors are terrified of. You never have to worry about dust. This is going to be in perfect condition in 30 years. All you got to do is, you know, the actual case. Right. But I love the options. You know, options are always awesome with toys, and too many toy companies don't give you options. It's like tear it open and that's it. You're done. Right. Being able to, you know, take it apart. It's just, I think it's fantastic. And for the price, like the quality of the printing of the card, it's nice glossy paper in there. Oh, yeah. Plus you've got on the back too.
Every one of our cards are UV. They're printed as collectible cards. We have a shop in LA that prints our, I can't give you the name because they do collectible cards, but our cards are about as official as you can get.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with these. So
thank you, man.
You know, I highly recommend these. I think they're fantastic, and I'm looking forward to doing some reviews on these too, on the old Smooth Raoul turntable.
Awesome. Oh, that would be like a dream come true, man. Just seeing them make it to the table.
Awesome. So Mark, big thank you. It's been a blast chatting with you, and we're going to keep chatting here. And just a couple of plugs for Build-A-Brick. You can find them on Instagram at Build-A-Brick, and also on Amazon. Just search for Build-A-Brick.
Yeah, Build-A-Brick Toys. Build-A-Brick Toys gets you almost our whole catalog in there.
And any other online presences?
We have a website, our www.buildabrick.com, and it has the hyphens in it, build-a-brick.com. So
right on. Check out, like, I highly recommend also people checking out your Instagram, because man, it's amazing. It is just an incredible wall of all of your favorite characters.
I think we're like 700 or 800 posts now on there, and I post things that we don't even see come to life. I mean, I'll have a custom I'll feel like we need to make, and I'll, like I did Arnold Commando from Commando, which is something I need to do anyway, but I threw it out there and everybody went nuts, and so it kind of sometimes gives me a chance to do a little market research.
Yeah.
But also give our fans that really, you know, come to Instagram to see something unique. And I post almost every day a little bit of something.
And it's really cool to see them all in the same scale and the same style, you know. So yes. It really is something like, you know, we talked earlier about they're always changing the scales. It's awesome to see all these characters in the same scale. And, you know, like, I guess Super 7 is trying to do it with those reaction figures. Those aren't really my cup of tea, but these, because I grew up on Lego, you know, and these, some would say, resemble Lego from a certain angle.
Very compatible.
There's that extra bit of nostalgia for them. So I absolutely love them. So thanks again for joining me on this Toy Guys Talking. We're going to keep going with Toy Guys Keep Talking on Patreon. Everyone out there, thanks a lot for watching, listening, and until next time, Nerdmas Day.